Like many people who are book obsessives, especially if you're also like me and have a December birthday, I've been trying to clear my book pile a little bit recently in the anticipation of future kind of birthday, Christmas books, which has led to me picking up some kind of bigger, chunkier books off the pile that have been there for a while. Now, this is going to be a bit of a kind of rant about the Three Body Problem series, which I'm going to have to explain because I do really like sci-fi as a genre, and I like when I read it, I found that I quite like hard sci-fi, so stuff that uses pretty accurate science to sort of set up the world and talk about what's happening. Now, the Three Body Problem series by Cixin Liu, of which this is the last book in the trilogy. This is called Death's End. There are a couple of other books in it that I think were continued by the translator. So the original 3 books in the trilogy are The Three Body Problem, The Dark Forest and Death's End. There was a Netflix adaptation of The Three Body Problem that I got kind of about halfway through, but it was pretty good, so I do recommend going to check it out. I really like the original Three Body Problem book. I think it's fantastic. It uses physics really well. It sets up this scenario with a bit of a kind of virtual world with a 3-body problem. There's like a world with 3 suns that has kind of very unreliable sort of seasons and issues that people are trying to solve the problem of. And then you get this kind of communication with other entities from outside of our universe who are having sort of problems and are coming towards us and are going to cause those problems. And that it's a brilliantly themed, interesting book. It's sort of set it with a lot of Chinese scientists, so you get a lot of things about like science in China and like the impact of the Cultural Revolution and things like that, which makes it for a really clever and different science fiction read. So I heartily recommend reading The Three Body Problem. What I don't recommend is continuing on. So my problem was I read The Three Body Problem when it came out well before the Netflix series. Really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. Then I bought The Dark Forest, which is the second in the series, and I read that and I really didn't enjoy it. And it put me off reading Death's End for a really long time. In fact, I didn't even buy Death's End until the Netflix series of The Three Body Problem came out. And then we started watching it and it reminded me how much I liked the first book. And I wondered if it had that trilogy series of problems, you know, where you read the first book and it's amazing. The second book of the trilogy is kind of setting up all the things for like the end. It was like a middle series problem where you've got to set some stuff up, you've got to like set some people up, you've got to do things, so you sort of suffer in those books. They're not as readable or exciting because they don't have the sort of same pizzazz as like the beginning and the end, because they're setting up the things for the end. And because I'd remembered how much I liked the original book, I went back and bought Death's End to see if that was actually the case, if that had happened. Maybe The Dark Forest just isn't a good read because it's setting up Death's End, and because there are so many complicated concepts in this book, you know, that maybe is an issue. However, I've got to the end of Death's End and it really did. Getting to the end felt like an actual bit of a challenge with this. It's a very thick book. It's about 700 and something pages. So it does feel like you're wading through, and there's definitely bits that could have been edited out. However, the bit that really annoyed me about this is the ending. It feels like it's had a lot of physics and a lot of science and ideas thrown at it to sort of mystify you with the science, to avoid the fact that it doesn't really have like much of an ending. It kind of fizzles out, and that doesn't feel like it's doing justice to the complexity of the book. So for me, it kind of spoils the overall effect of the series, because you start with The Three Body Problem, which is amazing, but if you read the other 2, they kind of let down the setup from the beginning, which is so good. like probably one of the best sci-fi books of modern times. Definitely up there with things like Ted Chiang and Andy Weir. If you like those kind of books, you would love it, right? It's brilliant. So I think where I've come to in a conclusion with this is that Cixin Liu is a great author. I loved his Ants and Dinosaurs book as well. But if you are wanting to read the Three Body Problem, my advice would be to go for reading the Three Body Problem only. Decide that it's not a trilogy, read that, stop there, enjoy the fact that it's an amazing sci-fi book, and do yourself the massive favour of not going into either of the other two, because they have been dragged out and do not do the first book the justice that it deserves. So it's sort of a rant because I really don't like the other two in the trilogy, but I love the first one so much that I think everybody should read that. Just read it and don't read any others, please.